You can be the most talented player in the world, and if you're only committed to talent and not to culture, I don't think you're ever going to achieve the pinnacle of your sport. I think great culture draws great talent, but the right kind of great talent. It's not going to draw that prima donna, narcissistic, it's got to be all about me kind of talent.
It's so bizarre to me that we live in an era in which we aren't getting the authentic, real, unedited versions of what our president will be.
We have a culture where leadership is no longer emerging naturally. There was something in American culture that generated genius, intellect, leadership, bravery, and with all the flaws and faults in this nation, you could not match the level of leadership this nation raised up in comparison to other nations.
You were listening to Mind Shift Podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin and Raphael McManus. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a fun week. A lot of good things happening. Yeah.
It's Tuesday.
Well, I'm thinking from the last time we did the podcast.
Yes. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, we went with all of our little cultural takes. It's interesting to get great feedback from people.
It is. I mean, any clip about Trump goes. Did we even really talk about Trump? We just talked about, but we did in the last episode.
We talked about the court case.
We did talk about the court case, but people, did you look at your comments?
No.
I went on your account and I was like, I gotta get off this account. This is crazy.
I don't even know how to do that.
What do you mean? You see it. What are you talking about? You know how to do that.
Okay.
I feel like you know how to do that. Anyways, the comments were, did you look at the comments, Austin?
A little bit, then I saw.
Oh, yeah. It's not good for the mind. It had nothing to do really about, I mean, there was some. We always get called Zionists every once in a while, or evangelical, blah, 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 blah. But with all that said,
I didn't know we were getting so much hate.
Oh, it wasn't hate. It was just people like jump on each other. The comments kind of became more of like a reading board, or what do they call it? Like a subreddit or something. Anyways, welcome back. I don't even know where we were. It's good to be here. We watched the championship last night, NBA Finals, Celtics versus the Dallas Mavericks. To me, hot take, the NBA is the new wrestling organization. How does the Celtics go from losing by 40? I mean, at one point, I think they were almost down by 50,
yeah.
in Dallas, to then going to Boston and blowing them out by 20.
Yeah, I think that one of the meaningless conspiracy theories will be that Boston lost on purpose in Dallas so they could A, celebrate at home in Boston, get the win there, maybe B, increase TV revenue by having 5 games, not just 4. or maybe
a win for you, a win for me.
Yeah, maybe they didn't plan to lose, they just didn't care about winning.
I mean, it may be, but if you watched, that game on Friday, the game on Friday was so extremely boring. We both fell asleep at halftime.
Oh yeah,
halftime.
The one where the Mavericks won, you mean?
Yeah, the last game, second to last game.
They basically set all the starters for the fourth quarter. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, but they were already losing by like 45 at that point. Anyways, NBA, you've lost me. You lost me a little bit. I'm happy the Celtics won. I'm not a big Boston sports fan. There's no hate on Boston, but when you grow up in LA, you can't really love Boston. But I hate the Lakers, so I'm not mad that Boston has one more championship than the LA Lakers.
When you say you hate the Lakers and we live here in LA, you just make life harder for us, right?
I know.
Laker fans are not forgiving.
But it's true. It's true. But here's the context. When you grow up on the other side of the tracks, you pick the Clippers.
Yeah.
And because it was kind of the blue collar team, so that was
true.
The Clippers were our team. They were the ghetto team.
They were the poor man's LA team.
They were. And
that's why we're Clipper fans.
Yeah, and I hate them too. Just so we're clear, they're like the ex-girlfriend. Like you want to love them, you kind of miss them sometimes, but you got to choose to walk away when you do. No. But I have such a hard time with the Clippers because now we live in the city of LA and everyone is a Lakers fan.
Yeah, but I will say the Clippers and Lakers versus Boston gives us a great cultural conversation because Boston built a team through the draft. They built a team by building a culture.
Yeah.
The Lakers, and I'll say the Clippers too, they keep trying to buy championships. It works for the Lakers. Lakers know how to spend money to buy championships. They'll bring in LeBron, they'll bring in AD, they'll bring in Gasol, they'll bring in whoever it may be. Kobe was organic. He was a draft pick. But the Lakers always try to build teams by taking the most talented people and bringing them to LA. The Clippers have tried that. Hasn't worked really, really well. Boston could have exploded that team, blown it up, and got rid of the players, but they held on to Tatum, they held on to Brown, they built on that roster, and I do think that if you're trying to have sustained excellence, creating a culture rather than simply trying to recruit talent is way better. It's way stronger. And so it's a great question to ask yourself. Like, would you be I'm going to go find the best talent, or would you be I'm going to build the best culture kind of GM?
I think there's the importance. There's a nuance there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Lakers. It's the Lake Show. They go and buy talent. I mean, they brought Kobe up. So Kobe is a really unique one, right? Because they got him young, and they developed him and they built him, and then he became Kobe, right? So that's a unique story. But even the pieces around Kobe, they were always trading to get guys to, and I guess that's a part of the league. It's a part of what you have to do. But I really love Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors were my team. Because here's my thing. For all of you out there, they're like, "Oh, you're a bandwagoner." Yes, when you grow up a Clippers fan and you're just hoping they break 500, meaning they win more games than they lose, you have to be able to choose a second team.
Right. If you're a Clipper fan, you have a regular season team and then a playoff team.
Yeah.
They're not the same team.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I always loved Golden State Warriors. I loved that Steph. I loved that Green. I loved that Klay Thompson were there organically. They were draft picks. They developed them. They built them. And then, of course, they went and got Kevin Durant. They went and got a couple other guys. But yeah, that's part of basketball. I do think culture is better than stars. Culture over talent.
Yeah.
Every time.
Even when you look at the Warriors bringing KD, so KD doesn't ever really buy into the culture. They win 2 championships with him, but he's out of there as fast as he can get out of there. And and then he ends up becoming a journeyman, always trying to prove that he was better than Steph in terms of creating culture, a better leader. And it just clearly wasn't true. Because
you think he was trying to do that?
I do.
I think everybody who knows KD or knows of KD knows that there's not a leadership bone in his body.
No, but he wants to prove he can win without Steph. He wants to prove he can win based on his stardom, his talent. And what he's proven is that his talent isn't enough.
Yeah.
And what Steph has proven is that his talent isn't enough, and he knows it because he builds a great team. The greatest players in the world know that it's a team game, not an individual game. Even Michael Jordan, who's the greatest who ever played, he knew he needed a great team to win. He played a lot of years, I think 9 years, and before he had that championship, as the best player who could not get over the hump and win the championship. And I think that's the dilemma with...
It took Jordan 9 years?
I think it was year 9 where Jordan won his first title.
Wow, that's crazy.
Somewhere like that. I'm not going to...
No, but that sounds right.
Yeah, but the whole point of it is that you can be the most talented player in the world, and if you're only committed to talent and not to culture, I don't think you're ever going to achieve the pinnacle of your sport. And I think it's true in business. It's true in any arena in life. Great culture supersedes great talent. At least that's where I put my money on.
But then talent helps.
Of course it does. But I think great culture draws great talent.
What?
I think great culture draws great talent.
Yeah.
But the right kind of great talent. It's not going to draw that prima donna, narcissistic, it's got to be all about me kind of talent.
Yeah.
I mean, I was shocked when Jaylen Brown won MVP.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing.
And not Tatum, right? And
I mean, Tatum was shooting everything they were giving him the ball. I think he scored close to 30, and then he had a double and almost a triple double. He had 8 rebounds and 2 steals. But he still couldn't get it,
And to me, in the last 10 minutes, I'm thinking to myself, Tatum is going for the MVP.
Yeah.
Because at that point, he wasn't really even passing that much.
Well, they were up by 20. They didn't need to pass.
He was driving and he was scoring. He had the ball. He was taking it in. And I was trying to count how many times he passed it to Jaylen in the last 10 minutes. I don't think there were too many times. And but I also think you could make an argument that Holiday was the MVP, and I think that's what makes the Celtics so unique. Brown deserved it. I think Tatum deserved it, and I think Holiday deserved it. I think all three of them, you could argue they were the MVP of the team.
I mean, the quote of the night might be Jaylen Brown saying, we share this together. And every interview, every question, I don't know the name of the woman who was interviewing doing the post-game interview where everyone's on the stage.
Is it Doris Burke?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
With the trophy, and they had Adam Silver, and then they announced the MVP, and then they were interviewing all the different players. I mean, one player literally broke his tooth and said, "I will lose all my teeth for the championship." And then it was white. It was white.
Yeah,
and then he's clipped afterwards talking about how great Joe Mazzulla is as a head coach. I mean, he's 35 years old. He got the team at the end of last year,
at the age of 34.
At the age of 34, he's got to be the youngest head coach in the NBA, and then he goes and wins a championship. And this man loves God, has a deep relationship with Jesus, very loud and outspoken about it. And you just look at the players, like he even from the ownership, when they interviewed the ownership, and then he immediately credits the success of the team to the coach. And you're like, this man is 35. No doubt he brought incredible insight and fresh perspective, but he could have easily overlooked Joe Mazzulla and just gone straight to Tatum and Brown, who have been there longer than Mazzulla. They've been there for 7 years. They're their 7th year playing together.
Yeah.
I think it was the longest run of a duo before they win a championship. Because I think Jordan got Pippen later, right? And so it was really interesting to watch. From the top down, everyone was sharing the credit. And it didn't feel like false humility. It felt like, because they were still going, we're the best in the world, but we are the best in the world versus I'm the best in the world. And there's something really unique about that culture. And I wish we could get Mazzulla on this podcast to talk about how he built such a unique culture.
Yeah.
I think it was the difference maker. He was obviously the difference maker. I think him and Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination between having an incredible amount of confidence in yourself and an incredible amount of confidence in the team.
Okay. Anyways, sports person or not, one, I don't think I care about the NBA anymore. But there are still stories I like to hear about, and I do think, I kept saying the whole time, I was like, I hate Boston, but I love Tatum and Brown, and I as much as it hurts to watch the Celtics win another one, I'm happy that they won another one. And it didn't feel like the Mavericks. I thought Kyrie Irving going over shaking everyone's hand. He has showed that he's evolved so much. They booed him every time.
Oh, they did.
Screamed Kyrie sucks.
I started feeling bad for him.
I know. You feel bad, though. I wasn't allowed to boo as a kid.
No, I think it's classless.
Why?
I think you don't boo other players. Several reasons. One, that is not a player. It's a human. And I think fans dehumanize players. Once you're wearing a uniform, it's almost as if you're not a real human being. Two, Kyrie Irving is one of the greatest talents in the world, and I know he has mental health issues. Why constantly boo someone who's fought a fight to move toward mental health to be able to perform at the highest level?
So what should the opposing team do?
Cheer your team. Don't boo the other team. That's what I say. And if you're going to boo, don't go
Kyrie sucks.
Kyrie sucks.
The entire time.
Yeah. Just boo in general, whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no worse fans than Oklahoma City, Boston, and probably the Lakers in the league. Like you just,
in terms of you're the away team.
Yeah.
In Philly.
Philly's so irrelevant to me. The last thing they did was that bell that the founding fathers put up in that museum. Like Philly to me is so irrelevant, so irrelevant. No, I know that we hate a lot about other cities on the podcast.
Philly, I love you. Donovan McNabb, you're amazing.
No, this actually broke my heart on the YouTube, on the comments of the podcast. Someone said, "I know you hate the Midwest."
I've made way too much fun of the Midwest. For us, that's our way of joking. It's like us saying, LA is the best city in the world, but we know it's not. We know it's not. No, I get DMs from people. Hey, this is I live in Michigan. I'm sorry.
I do too. I know. I'm from Ohio. Please forgive me.
We're just messing with you.
Yeah,
all
we're
right?
just having fun. There's great people everywhere.
We're just mad that all the healthy people live in the middle of the country.
What do you mean? Oh, like all the sane people.
All the sane people,
Yeah.
all the mentally healthy
I think
people.
there's some correlation to people who live in Los Angeles and how healthy they are physically and how broken they are mentally.
That's true. You could probably do an inverted scale where I think the closer you are to an ocean, the more physically healthy you are, probably the more mentally unhealthy you are. And probably the further you move from an ocean, probably the more physically unhealthy you are, but the more mentally healthy you are as a human being.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a give and take there.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle of that map, there's like the perfect place to live. Maybe it's Colorado.
Yeah. It's called Denver.
They're physically and mentally healthy there.
Yeah, maybe. But anyways, okay. So let's take a week off of politics. But before we do that, should we talk about the debate that you were telling me about?
Yeah, I thought this was so interesting. One, I can't even imagine having another election where there's really no debate and really no campaign. Because in the last election, there was really no campaign.
It was the middle of COVID, like the first
Middle
year
of
of
COVID,
right? Yeah.
it was like everything was postured where I just never could have imagined someone winning the presidency without actually having to run for the office. This is what happened, with President Biden.
Yeah.
And so then I see the rules for this debate, right? No audience, no.
Wait, sorry. Where did you see this?
I've seen it on CNN, MSNBC, Fox. It's everywhere. Like all the rules for the debate.
Okay.
There, microphones are off when you're not speaking, which means you can't banter or fight.
Okay. Which means Trump can't railroad Biden. That's
Yes.
really what it means. Yeah.
There's no audience, which means you can't have all the people jeering and cheering, which Trump feeds on.
Right.
Right. No family members allowed. It's CNN who I could say objectively hates Trump.
Yeah.
and
One
protects
could
Biden.
say that Fox News doesn't like Trump either, though.
He's earned the right to be disliked by every network.
Haven't we all? Okay.
And so it's CNN, and so he has such disdain, and they have such disdain for him. So it's. I think I heard him say they made me an offer I couldn't accept. They set up the debate in such a way that they knew I'd say no, and he goes so that they could create a narrative. We tried to debate Trump, and he said no. He said so. I went ahead and said yes, which I'm going to go ahead and give this one to him. This was very smart. You say yes, even in the worst conditions, and because you don't want the narrative that you won't debate. It's sort of like, the gunfight at high noon, you just show up and you either win or you lose, but you got to show up. So I actually think this is a very interesting situation. It sounds like a very boring debate. And I heard some of the political analysts who were from the Democratic side explaining that they wanted to go back to the way debates started, before
television?
before Nixon, Kennedy, right at the beginning of it all.
Yeah.
But how many of us are trying to go back to a medium that's so antiquated that no longer is relevant to the modern world? But I actually think it should be free fall. I think if you're going to run for president, there should be an audience. There should be open mics. There should be other candidates. There should be, there should be the opportunity for people to watch you act and react, because that's what you're really looking for. You're not looking for canned, prepared statements. You're not looking for responses that you've been rehearsed 1,000 times for. What you're looking for is, how does this person react? How do they respond to crisis? How do they deal with conflict? How what kind of temperament do they have when they've been insulted or when they've been proven that their point is wrong? That's what I want to see in the debate. We're not going to get to see that in this debate. But at the very least, I think two questions will be answered. One, can Donald Trump be aggressive without being so adversarial he turns the whole country against him? Because I think a lot of times he is his own worst enemy. Two, can President Joe Biden be coherent? Can he hold a thought? Does he have the mental acuity to be the president for 4 more years? Those two questions are maybe at the very least will get answered. Maybe not.
Well, Without perpetuating the YouTube comments, I would like to respond to this. There's an amazing parallel here because you look at Boston Celtics and Joe Mazzulla and the youthfulness of a 35-year-old coach who's been a coach for a year and a half, and the culture change, the new perspective, the value added to the team, right? I think our country is the Boston Celtics to some degree, as much as this pains me to say. But I think we have incredible people. We have a potential of such an incredible culture. We have this idea of democracy that whether you agree that or not that it's an actual living in an existence in our culture. I don't know that we live necessarily in a democracy anymore. I don't know that our vote counts. I don't know that our opinion matters as much as it used to. I think things need to change. That's the point. And I don't know if this debate even means that much to me. I think the reality that it is so perplexing that our president, one, would use the judicial system to go after a former president in the way that he has obviously done, which is so bizarre to me, but then and so inappropriate, and then to control a debate in the way he is. That is so unethical. It's so unethical. It should be hosted by a third party, maybe by like the civilians, the citizens of the country. It's so bizarre to me that we live in an era in which we aren't getting the authentic, real, unedited versions of what our president will be.
Yeah.
It does. I'm 35, right? So I haven't seen it all. I'm still in the middle of life, the first third of life. But it does feel that the longer we live, the more the institution starts to crumble. And not to have a negative perspective. The parallel is this: the Boston Celtics with Joe Mazzulla bringing new perspective and fresh eyes. We need that in our government.
Yeah,
why is there? And Obama was not it. We thought Obama might be it, bringing hope. But Obama was just a great marketing campaign. And I think he's a good human, but he was a terrible politician and a very average president.
I say he was a great politician because he created.
I think he was a great communicator.
Well, I mean, to me, if in the classic sense of a politician, he was able to win a broad number of people toward his campaign. And,
there's always more Dems than there are Republicans.
Yeah, but I actually think a lot of Republicans, even though they didn't like his policies, were attracted to someone who felt more youthful, more thoughtful, more intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt like there was someone finally from our era that we could attach to go, okay, we can believe in you. But obviously the diversity was very unique and very much needed. You need to be able to see diversity. You need to see men and women both leading the country. I think it's ridiculous there hasn't been a woman president. Also, I think it shows that our current government doesn't lift up young leaders, men or women. Like, they don't build the culture that the youth should actually have a voice. They want to make you feel like you do by bringing radical left agendas to the surface. Even Obama, and Obama's a horrible politician because his policies didn't last. That's what I think makes maybe a good politician. I guess that's what we have to figure out. What is that standard? What makes a good politician? Not just can you get your way in the moment with an executive order, but does the law, the policy that you actually pass last longer than you do? Is it seen to be wise and effective in bringing a healthy change for the everyday citizen, right? And that's what I base it off of. To me, both of the current candidates that are leading, and I guess people in the YouTube comments were also saying, what about RFK? What about RFK? What about him? He's going to have an amazing Netflix documentary after all this is over, but I don't know that he's actually going to make it into office. I think he's fascinating. I think he's intelligent. I think he's unique, and I like the fact that he isn't perfect, that he had a past, and then he talks about it openly. But to me, he isn't. Unfortunately, it is a two-party system, right? Unfortunately.
I actually really like Robert Kennedy. I actually think he's running 20 years too late for himself.
Okay.
And because he's not a younger candidate.
What is he?
He's 70 years old, although he's in incredible shape.
He looks younger than 70.
I mean, he's just absolutely ripped. But he is 70 years old. So I wish he had started this 20 years ago and put himself into that kind of national conversation earlier. When I listen to him, although it's really hard to listen to him, it takes him so long to finish a sentence. And I mean, he can finish a sentence. That's the difference between him and Biden. But it takes him a long time to finish a sentence. But I think he's thoughtful, intelligent. I actually agree with a lot of his positions. He would consider himself, I think, a conservative Democrat, not a liberal Republican.
Yeah.
But he's really more of a libertarian in that sense. I wish he was in the debates. I do. I think they would become slower because it takes him so long to get an answer.
Yeah.
I think he's got to learn how to become more pithy, more clear,
more concise.
More concise, yeah. But I wish he was in the mix of the conversation for presidency. I really, really do. And I think it's, I look back and with Reagan and with Bush and with Clinton, it seemed like there was just like 12 people on that stage running for president. You barely had to qualify. And now they're making sure it's just Biden and Trump. And I actually think
they're not even wasting time with other candidates, really.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's to reduce the complexity for President Biden. And so that he only has one person to have a conversation with and not multiple. It's a loss to our country that Washington wants a two-party system and only a two-party system. And that is where, to me, the greatest questions about the future of democracy lies. And the two parties hold so much power that no matter who you elect, you're just electing the same system. And that's a part of the problem. And then you look at, our presidents seem to come from Harvard and Yale. It's Ivy League, Ivy League, Ivy League. And now we know how far left the Ivy League is. I mean, it's a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, far left ideology that's coming out of university. Is that who we're going to be electing as president? Because if we don't change the stream of where we're getting our presidents, we're definitely changing the stream of where our ideology is coming from. Because our ideologies are not coming from a Western view of the world. Because the Ivy Leagues have definitely shifted where they're being informed from. They're definitely more informed from a socialist ideology than a democratic or capitalist or meritocracy kind of ideology. So it's interesting to me how this is all going to play out. I'm really fascinated. If I didn't have something invested, like being a citizen here, and I was just a social, anthropologist, I would be fascinated to see what happens to the social experiment known as the United States of America.
I don't want to live in a social experiment.
Well, you're living in one. You're in California,
and that's. We talk about lack of representation, but the reality is that young people need to get out there. There needs to. This government doesn't work anymore. The way that this works, it just shouldn't. It just doesn't work. The way that things operate doesn't work. I was listening to that interview with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is the weirdest homeschool kid I've ever seen have a podcast and a platform. You listen to his ads, and it's like radicalized right wing. It's like protect America, and I love our country. This is not hating on. It's just going. I wonder if we look at ourselves and how we're portraying ourselves in these ads, on these podcasts, in these interviews. He does an interview with President Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, and I have a lot of criticism of Bukele in this pod, but I also think that maybe it was poorly edited in some parts, and also he speaks English incredibly well. But he's struggling with some of the things he was saying, just little words, and I think it would slow him up on some of the concepts he was trying to get across. But one of the things I didn't like was that he says, I'm not going to name the nations, and then he just goes in and bashes America for the next 30 minutes. Though, and I get it. That was the point of the podcast, was to have a conversation about democracy from a little country's perspective to United States of America. But one thing that he brought up was the fact that there is so much mismanagement in the United States of funds, like this railway from San Francisco to LA, and they've spent, like $100 billion or $16 billion, like just an absurd amount of money, and it was costing like $100 million every meter, and they still can't get it done, to the point where they probably have to shut down the project.
Yeah.
And then he talks about even like the one tower, the World Trade Center, the new version of the World Trade Center, how it took 10 years to build. And he brings up, and I'm sure there's complexities in that I don't understand, but the point that was really interesting is he talks about how it took 1 year to build the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
And he goes, how could it have taken 1 year to build the Empire State Building with all the technology that we have, and it took us 10 years? And he goes, because there's so much corruption, there's so much delay, there's so much nepotism and this kind of
bureaucracy. And,
bureaucracy, and everyone's getting paid to do nothing.
Or it's cronyism. They're you have them to pay.
What is cronyism? You're having to grease everyone's hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just feels, and I get that it happens with large countries. I do get it, but it feels like so many of our problems could be solved if we focused more on what's better for the citizens of the United States than what is better for the world, right? And not that's not a dig on immigration or anything. It's just saying sometimes I feel like the United States needs to be focused on its people versus then always playing police around the world. We're getting in all these wars, we're spending an infinite amount of money, and I don't know. Anyways, that's just my thoughts. I just wish there was a younger presidential candidate, someone who actually has accomplished something. I don't necessarily love Zuckerberg or Bezos or Musk or these guys, but I'm like, I was having this conversation with a friend and they were talking about the founding fathers, and I said, who would the founding fathers be now?
Yeah.
Because these were educated leaders in their own right. They were the businessmen, they were farmers, they had these estates. Would it have been Bezos, Musk, Bezos, Musk, Zuckerberg, I don't know, Sam Altman from, OpenAI, is it ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gates? Would it have been these guys? I don't know. Is that a scary thought?
Well, I do think it's interesting when I hear things like, we need to elect a president who has experience in government rather than a president who doesn't have any experience in government. I'm going, no. we need to elect a president who has experience in business. And I'm very nervous when we elect people that only have experience in government, because that means they're lifelong career politicians. And so all they know how to do is work the political system. I want someone who doesn't know how to work the political system and disrupts it and makes the political system work for him.
Yeah.
And so I do think we're in trouble because we actually think the most qualified people are people who have been in the Senate for 50 years, and rather than people who built a $1 trillion company that has a larger economic base than most of the nations in the world.
Yeah.
And I would trust the government to someone who knows how to grow something rather than someone who knows how to manage something. And that's a part of the problem, is that politicians barely, in fact, they don't even know how to manage things because they're always going over budget.
Yeah.
Anywhere else, they would all be fired for mismanagement.
Yeah.
And we call them senior politicians. And so that's a part of the challenge. I didn't know we were going to have a political conversation
I know,
today,
we lost ourselves in this.
but it's okay. It's okay because I just would love to hear even like feedback from people,
Without going Trump 2024 or Biden 2024.
Yeah.
Like, have an intellectual debate, have a conversation. Don't just be annoying and get in the comments and, like there is no one more annoying than a Trump voter. Like a loud Trump supporter, there's no one more annoying. I swear, if they just learned how to be polite, there'd be a different climate.
Yeah, it's like, don't tell me what hat you wear, tell me what ideas you have.
Yes. What do you like about this candidate?
Yeah. I did see this commercial. I think it was on TikTok, and where there was like 20 celebrities saying, why are there famous people here? Why are there so many, even more famous people, so many famous people? And it was a campaign for Biden saying, the reason there are so many famous people is this election really matters. You need to get out there and vote. And I thought this was interesting. One, that it's on TikTok and it's all these famous people. So they must think that the people who are on TikTok are heavily influenced by celebrity.
Right.
Two, in what world does having 30 celebrities actually validate a particular candidate? Like, because you were able to, I don't know, be Ace Ventura or be on Fast and Furious doesn't mean that you have a lot of insight on,
politics.
The political future of America, politics. And then the other thing to me was, what makes you think Americans actually trust celebrities more than they trust like the everyday working guy? It just really.
They do.
Well, that scares me though.
We are inundated with influencers. And not that influencers are bad. I love influencers. I love people who are interested in fashion and food and culture and books and I think there's so many interesting things online. At the same time, there's also just so many dumb people online. And it feels like you have to weed, like, just like push through the weeds of garbage and having to, we make stupid people famous in America. Like, there's no doubt about that, right? We elect stupid people on both sides. So we're a culture of the Kardashians, like we've kind of fallen to a point where fast food isn't the only thing we're known for. It's fast influence.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's hard to know who to listen to now. But you're definitely right. Like, why do we put so much value in actors in the media for politics? Like, these people got famous because they're good at acting, not because they're good at doing any kind of political anything.
Yeah, building a meaningful ideology about how the world should work. I just saw this clip from my friend Lewis Howes, who has a lot of therapists, a lot of counselors.
Yeah.
And I don't know who his guest was, but they made a statement that said, you date at the level of your wounding. And so whatever your wounding is, that's who you're drawn to in a relationship. And I started, this just occurred to me right now, that I wonder if we elect at the level of our wounding, that we basically choose politicians based on where we are in our own level of trauma or wounding. And that what we have is that we have a really broken society, and we're electing people at our level of wounding. And so some people are really mad on the left and are really wounded and are electing someone who is intellectually incoherent. And then some are deeply wounded on the right and are electing someone who's seems to be, to me as well, intellectually incoherent at times. And we're not electing healthy, thoughtful, intelligent, holistic leaders because we're not that anymore as a country.
It's really interesting, right? Because
I'm just saying we're dating based on our level of wounding in elections.
Absolutely. And we're definitely electing at the level of our wounding, right? We're confused and we can't finish sentences. That is where we are at. And it does feel like it's rage politics. Mm-hmm. It feels like when we're feeling some type of way, we elect a president like Donald Trump, and then we're feeling, like we need safe and boring, we elect a man like President Joe Biden. And then we get into these really precarious positions where it oddly feels like we're at the precipice of something really big. And hopefully it's good big. Hopefully it's not bad big. And I have to believe that the world, I was reading your book this yesterday, actually. I just finished your new book.
Oh, the one that's about to come out.
The one that's about to come out. And it talks a lot about frequencies. And I kind of just wonder what frequency we're at right now as a culture in the States. But one unique thing, when I was in England, I know that the politics there are crazy at times too, and they're going through election as well, but it felt far less divisive. And I know that the leaving of the leaving of the Union, the European Union, and that was really heavy and that was hectic, and I wasn't there during that. But there's something about the media in the U.S. that's very, very, very maybe like dark,
caustic,
angry, and it's very inciting of anger and of specific emotions. And then we wonder why our culture reacts the way that it reacts when we have movements like BLM or when the Lakers win a championship, or you have these, we almost don't know how to handle our emotions when big things happen. And it worries me a little bit because I think that that's such an evolution, or it's such a reflection of what's going on inside of so many people. And we, you wrote an amazing book called The Way of the Warrior. And, this podcast is named after another one of your books, Mind Shift. But if we could make a mental mind shift and switch to that book, Way of the Warrior, and talk about peace, talk about inner peace and how important peace is inside of our mind, inside of our body. I like Goggins, but I kind of laugh at Goggins sometimes because I'm just like, there's just no way. There's no way. I'm not that. Yes. There's even in my toughest eras of manliness, I'm not that.
Yeah, we can't all kill a wild boar with our hands and eat it raw.
Yeah, and I was listening to Marcus Aurelius on audiobook, and I was in the sauna.
He did an audiobook?
Yeah, he brought him back to life, and he did an audiobook. But he was talking about, I'm like, this man ruled Rome.
Yeah.
And he's talking about being brought up in the ways of the old Greeks, sleeping on a plank with a hide of an animal as a blanket. And I was like, I don't want to. I as manly as that might make me, I like my bed and my comforter and my Skims. We're soft. We're soft now.
Yeah. I'm going to say this about where we are as a culture.
Okay.
If you are on the right, you have to know that Donald Trump probably isn't the healthiest expression of who we should be electing.
No.
And if you're on the left, you have to know Joe Biden is not the healthiest expression of who we should be electing. For either party to pretend that this is the ideal of who should be representing us as a nation, if you can't see that your elected figure is an inadequate expression of American ideals, there's something, I think, unhealthy. You're blinding yourself. If to me, it's what the only thing that to me is more terrifying than Joe Biden being president is Kamala Harris being president. The fact that we have a president and a vice president that you cannot have in good conscience a great deal of confidence in. And I don't feel any different about Donald Trump. Like, he is not who should be emerging to lead a conservative party.
No.
But he's filled a vacuum that's so vast that you don't even have a close number two. This is the thing. It's not like there are 8 people running on the right and you're going,
what happened?
It's really close. It's like, it's him.
Yeah.
You don't have 8 or 10 people on the left running going, oh my goodness, there's so many great candidates, but Biden just emerges above them all. It's as if there are 2 giant chasms. So there's an abyss on each side and no one is emerging. When they die, who's going to lead our country? Because I don't see anyone behind them that we can put our confidence in. And that to me is more terrifying than even the choice we have in this election. We have a culture where leadership is no longer emerging naturally. This used to be a nation where, whether you like it or not, I'm not even talking about, making America great again, but I will say this. There was something in American culture that generated genius, intellect, leadership, bravery, and with all the flaws and faults in this nation, you could not match the level of leadership this nation raised up in comparison to other nations. America around the world was known as a nation that percolated human greatness and capacity. We're not doing that anymore. And that is what makes me more nervous than this political moment. And that's why we went from basketball to politics, why we went from the Celtics to this election. Because when you're recruiting talent, you're looking to other cultures to have developed that talent. But when you're focusing on developing a great culture, talent emerges and it emerges and it emerges. And when you're in it for the long haul, talent is great for the moment and culture is great for the long haul. Our culture is not going to develop talent or leaders for the future. We're going to keep piecemealing and finding extremists because extremism always thrives in the vacuum of leadership. And that to me is a more important conversation. And that is what I see happening across our nation. When George Bush and Al Gore ran against each other, the difference between Al Gore and George Bush was actually nominal. And Gore went to Harvard, Bush went to Yale. They came from very, very similar ideologies. Of course, Gore was more an environmentalist and Bush was focused more on economics. But you wouldn't say the spectrum between right and left was so vast that they couldn't touch. You could see them having dinner together at some point if they were not running for president against each other, which is why the election was so close. But now we have Biden and Trump whose ideologies seem so far apart that you could never meet together in the same room. And that's to me, that's my greatest concern, is that the left and the right were not that far apart 50 years ago, not that far apart 20 years ago. Now the left and right are so far apart that some new expression of American politics has to emerge. And so maybe this is the context in which that third party does come up.
And that's the beautiful thing about Nayib Bukele.
Yeah.
Is that he has new ideas. I mean, not only does he come from the party of new ideas, that's literally the party name, but he has a new perspective. And that comes with, I think, his youthfulness. Comes from his age, comes from his diversity, comes from the fact that he's a Palestinian immigrant to El Salvador. I think he's second generation.
Maybe third.
Maybe third.
Yeah.
And that he sees it with fresh eyes. He believes that a little country that is very poor and was very, very overpopulated with gang members, and it was one of the murder capitals of the world for a decade, maybe two. He comes in and can bring change. I mean, he's very controversial, and there's a debate on, if he's violating human rights. But I think the people who violate human rights are the murderers, right?
And that's his argument.
And that is his argument.
Is that the global organizations don't care about the lives of innocent children. They care about the lives of the criminal element, that they're treated with justice. And Bukele's like, your rules don't apply here, because we're facing a problem that you don't face.
I think there's an underlying connecting point. When there's chaos, there can be control. And you look at COVID. When there was chaos, there was control.
Yeah.
When you're the murder capita of the world in a tiny poor country and you can't get yourself out and corruption rules, there's chaos, and then people can control. And so I think in a state where now that little country is so safe, now there's freedom. Now he can work on economics. Now he can rebuild. Now he can look to the future and bring investors and start to go, okay, there's a little beautiful, paradise in the middle of Central America that hasn't had much influence in the past, but now there's influence. And I loved that his first point when he talked about being reelected was, I'm going to seek the wisdom of God. Which Tucker Carlson, as bizarre as that man is, I do love that he highlighted that.
Yeah.
And he said, he's like, I don't think in all of my life I've ever seen a politician actually mean it and say it.
Yeah.
That the first thing we're going to do is seek God's wisdom. That there is a creator beyond ourselves that we look to give us guidance. And how can we make the most wise decisions to move forward? And there's something about it. Whether you believe or don't believe, I think we have to look to God for wisdom, to how we can move forward. And though I think Trump has been unjustly and unfairly accused of a lot of things, I think we care far more about these presidents and who they sleep with in the past than we do the policy they'll bring and the change they'll bring, which I find if it's very oddly voyeuristic and very evil to me for people to go. I understand to some degree you got to go into their past to understand the decisions they've made, but I do not like setting up crosses to nail people to them politically or in life. I think people have to be able to change. People have to be able to grow. And at the moment our society becomes this very, indoctrinated, dictatorial space, I go, no one cares about the morality of the people they like. They only care about the morality of the people that they want to take down.
Yeah.
And it has to change. And I hope that there's change, and I hope that there's new life. I just want there to be new people. There has to be new characters unlocked in the world, Anyway.
Yeah.
It was a fun little podcast.
Yeah, no, I think that as election gets closer, we got to talk about this more. And I'm trying to be politically neutral in the way I'm expressing things, but I'll admit I am not politically neutral anymore in that sense.
It's surprising to me.
Because at the core of my core, I have the soul of an anarchist. And I've never been able to shake that. That's who I was in my youth and as a young man, and it does come back. And so when I watch political systems leverage their power to try to stop someone from being able to be a candidate, it pushes me toward that candidate. Not because I agree with that candidate, I just don't like the manipulative, controlling aspect of government. And I think it's more dangerous. And I don't know if I've ever seen more gaslighting in my life when you go, Donald Trump will be the end of democracy. I'm going, I think that your fear Donald Trump may be the end of democracy. And when it was the Democrats saying the Republicans, Donald Trump's going to come in and weaponize the judicial system. I think that you have weaponized the judicial system. Donald Trump is going to end, free elections. It seems like you're gaslighting and saying this person is going to do the very things you're doing, but it's like a sleight of hand. The moment you accuse the other person, no one thinks you're doing it. And I've always said this, and I've said this to you and to your mom growing up, listen to a person speak. Whatever they accuse the world of is what they're doing. And I think that's true on a political level. And so I'm in this moment going, right now I'm not even about a candidate. I'm about an ideology of political power. Do you really trust the government to control what we see, what we read, what we hear, what we're allowed to talk about? And I see the left as a more controlling agency, trying to control what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to think, what we're allowed to believe. And it terrifies me that we might have a totalitarian ideology imposed on all Americans. And when people are saying that that's what the right is doing and going, absolutely not. That is what the left are doing. I think the right have enough confidence in their ideas to debate. And I think the left believe that debate is a betrayal of their ideals. You're not allowed to disagree with the left. You are allowed to disagree with the right, even on this podcast. If I disagree with the right, I'll get a lot of people on the right arguing with me. And if I disagree with the left, I'll get a lot of people canceling me.
It's really interesting. I've lost a lot of friends during our podcast. I lost a lot of friends during COVID when our podcast, because we said stuff.
Yeah.
And given I grew up very liberal in that way, obviously I had a faith background, and mom was very much a conservative from the South, but you grew up in LA. I grew up in LA. Even the most conservative people were very liberal as well. And so COVID was very eye-opening for me, because I wasn't, you're an anarchist, so some of that rubbed off. But I'm also someone who just doesn't, because you tell me to do it, just because you tell me to do it, and because you said science backs it, does not add up to me. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And now I often wonder, and I've said it to a few friends, like, oh, it's nice that you talked so much, you posted everything that Fauci was spewing from his mouth, yet you didn't post it when they went back on it and retracted in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And they said, actually, we didn't really know, or actually it did come from a lab, or actually this was something he invested in. It doesn't really matter to me now, but I go, my brain just questions things.
Yeah.
Why? Why do we do this? Why are we doing this? It's only been 6 weeks. You all of a sudden have vaccines? I'm so confused. So for me, I look at it and I go, you do need to ask more questions.
Yeah.
And we do need to not be more cynical, but to be more inquisitive and to be more curious. And the reality is that I think the world is so much better when we're curious.
Absolutely.
And so when it comes to candidates, when it comes to ideologies, when it comes to the Bible Belt, when it comes to the coasts, I think you have to ask a lot more questions going, is this healthy? Is this healthy for the next generation? Is this healthy for this generation? I turned the news off a long time ago. I read the news now because I don't want it being yelled at me, because I'm protecting my mind a bit more, and I think people need to do that a bit more as well.
Yeah, for me right now, it's not even about who's right and wrong, but who's more intellectually honest.
Yes, and that's why I do really like, we got to go, but this is why I really do like RFK. He really is honest about the things he struggled with.
You see, and that's what I feel like. I feel like with RFK, I know who he is. I know his beliefs. I believe he's sincere. I don't believe that there's any falseness in him. And if I were going to just vote based on who I trusted as a human being, I would vote for RFK.
Would you?
I would. Because I actually think he's the only one who is consistently true to his convictions and his beliefs, and without a volatility to it.
That's the other. Yeah, he's calm.
He's calm.
He's passionate, but he has a peace
I think
to him.
Trump believes what he says, but he's so volatile that I think some moments he believes it just because he's angry, and then later on when he's not angry, he may shift. And with Biden, I'm old enough to have watched Joe Biden change his position so many times I don't know what his position is. He has triangulated himself so many times over the decades where he has said the exact opposite. And so I think he's like a classic politician where his belief systems are based more on the outcome of electability than on a core belief that drives his life. That's just my position. That's how I see it. I give myself the right to disagree with myself later.
You can change your mind later.
Yeah.
we used to say this during COVID, was
Yeah.
that we give ourselves permission to change our minds. Anyways, we hope you guys have an incredible week. Next week, we'll talk about something completely different, probably. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out The Arena at thearenasummit.com. Rate and review this podcast, and we will see you guys next week.
All right.
All right,
It's a
love
great
you, Dan.
conversation. I love it.